Good morning and welcome to the Savannah Resources PLC investor presentation. Throughout this recorded presentation, investors will be in listen-only mode. Questions are encouraged. It can be submitted any time via the Q&A tab situated in the right-hand corner of your screen. Just click Q&A, scroll to the bottom, type your question and press send. The company may not be in a position to answer every question received during the meeting itself. However, the company review all questions submitted today and publish responses where appropriate to do so. Before we begin, we'd like to submit the following poll. I'd now like to hand you over to Dale Ferguson, CEO. Good morning.
Good morning, Mark, and thank you to everyone online for taking the time to come to our presentation today and listening to the presentation on the Barossa lithium development, where we hope to be the first large-scale spodumene mine on mainland Europe, and certainly why we think it's worth taking a closer look at the SAVANNAH resources opportunity. Sorry, there's just something popped up on my screen there. So I've got a presentation here, and we'll step through that. Sorry, I'm in Perth at the moment, and there's a large storm here, so there's just a little bit of a lag, but I hope that everybody can see that now. So getting underway, I thought we'd just start with having a look at sort of the key metrics around SAVANNAH. So over the last 2 or 3 years, SAVANNAH has divested its Oman projects and its Mozambique projects to become a pure lithium play with a European focus. We're quite a unique company in that we own 100% of our projects still, and we've purposely held on to 100% of our offtake, two very important pieces of a puzzle which we hope to be able to play in the coming months and years ahead. I think we can consider ourselves a low-risk project. We've focused on spodumene mineralisation, and we've got very conventional production techniques, so the same sorts of techniques which have been around for the last 20 or 30 years, and certainly we're seeing them on a regular basis nowadays. I think probably one of the most important milestones for the company was our approval of our key environmental licence, our DIA, in May of this year, and that really gave us the second sort of key piece of paper that we need. So we currently now have a granted mining lease for the production of lithium and also the environmental licensing now. So that then enabled us to complete an updated scoping study with a view to moving towards a new definitive feasibility study. But that new scoping study gave us a very robust NPV of around 950 million, an IRR of around 80%, and a payback period of just a little bit over a year. So by any metrics, a very robust project, and that sees us targeting production in around the mid of 2026. So still a couple of years to go, but it's going to be an exciting time ahead. Just quickly, a couple of comments about the last few weeks. We've been very busy continuing to strengthen our treasury. So we wanted to make sure that we could get through to the end of our DFS, and we conducted a very successful capital raise over the last couple of weeks. We were able to raise £6.5 million and be able to do it at strike. So we had very strong support from our existing shareholders, and certainly if anybody on the line has invested during that, thank you very much. But also we're able to bring in a couple of new institutions who could see the true value in this stock, and they were very happy to invest at the market price. So we're very happy to be able to get that sort of level of money in, and the support from our shareholders, and without having to take any discount for that. So just quickly, I won't dwell too much on this. I'm sure everybody is very familiar with the lithium market. Certainly by all metrics and all graphs you want to look at that anybody wants to provide, the world needs more lithium, and SAVANNAH is very well positioned to supply that, and supply it in a socially and environmentally responsible way. So I think whichever way you look at it, certainly for the foreseeable future, the next 5 to 10 years, there appears to be a continuing deficit, and we'll be able to be coming into the market at the key time to help service that deficit. I guess talking about some of the key aspects of the project, we're very well located. Certainly in the north of Portugal's first world setting. We are the largest hard rock potential hard rock development in Europe. So we're certainly very large scale. As I mentioned, we're conventional, low risk. There's certainly a lot of exploration potential, which is available there as well. So I think, we've got all the key ingredients for success. And certainly it's, a very positive backdrop in Europe at the moment with the recent CRM Act, but also, the identification of lithium and rare earths as sort of critical raw materials, and certainly the push from the European government there to try and find 10% worth of domestic supplied battery metals, and particularly lithium, in the short term. So certainly we're seeing very strong support from both the European and Portuguese government, which is certainly very, very encouraging. In terms of the project itself, it's located up here in the north of Portugal, so just inland from Porto. So it's about 145 kilometres from Porto. We are quite close to a main freeway here, so we're about 28 kilometres off the main A24 freeway. And quite uniquely, we're about 1 kilometre off the main grid. And when we plug into that main grid, we get 73% renewable power. So it's the opportunity in Europe, whilst there's some higher bars when it comes to social and environmental, certainly when you look at the ability to plug in and just get 75% renewable power, it will certainly help us with our green credentials, and certainly driving down the carbon footprint of the potential operation. We're quite unique in the sense that it appears that we're going to have 2 or 3 potential refineries or hydroxide plants nearby. We've got one over here just to the south of Porto at a place called Esterasia, which is a joint venture between Bondelti and Reed Advanced Metals. And we've got a further one down here to the south, which is the Aurora Lithium project, which is at Setúbal, just to the south of Lisbon. And across here, about 200 kilometres to the east in Spain, we have a new development going up there, which is with a company called Envision. So within easy trucking distance of us, we have 3 hydroxide plants that look like they're going to be going up in around 2026, 2027, which coincides very well for us with our production schedule as well. So we are very well located, and I think in terms of driving down our carbon footprint for our product, we're not going to have to face intercontinental shipping, so that will give us both carbon savings as well as real cost savings. So we're very well positioned, and I think there's some significant advantages for the location of our project. Just zooming in and looking at the project itself, we currently have a 30-year mine license. The current resource, which we just updated a little while ago, is at 28 million tonnes. It has a very large exploration target to go with it of 11 to 19 million tonnes, which suggests we've got a strong chance to expand this resource out over 50 million tonnes. So all ore bodies are open at long strike and down dip, and we still have probably another 6 to 8 high priority lithium-bearing pegmatites that we haven't drilled yet. So we're very hopeful that we can continue to expand this resource and increase the mine life and perhaps the throughput of this operation. The other interesting thing, which we hope to see later in this year, all going well, is Portugal launching their national exploration tenders for 6 blocks for a very prospective ground for lithium. So we'll be looking to participate in that, and we're very hopeful we'll be able to secure 1 or 2 blocks as part of that. So we're looking to continue to build our footprint in Portugal. Portugal's got some amazing geology and certainly a lot of spodumene bearing pegmatites, and that's really the main focus of our business, is to focus on spodumene mineralization, which is really the main mineralization for hard rock ore bodies. Looking at our project in a little bit more detail. So in July of last year, we entered Article 16, where the government identified a number of issues they were concerned about with our original plans. We then worked very closely with the government to resolve those issues which they've raised, which led to the successful approval of our project in May of this year. So the sort of key issues which we look to resolve, number one was access. So you can see this sort of yellow squiggly line here, which is the main access route in. So we've committed to a road which will see none of the mine traffic pass through any town. So all the trucks, etc., will go around all towns all the way to the A24 freeway. So that's a capital commitment in the order of 30 million euros to do that. So that's a significant piece of community infrastructure as well, which the community will be able to access that. The second major area that was of concern was water. So our original plan impacted 12 streams. We worked closely with APA and their technicians, and were able to devise a new plan which minimised that impact and got us down to impacting only 4 streams. So whilst we couldn't get that down to 0 because we have a number of streams which pass through some of the key deposits, we're able to reduce that impact significantly. The other major issue was where we're going to source our water from. So there was concern around getting the water from the nearby Covis River, and we were able to get around that by installing a series of reservoirs which will capture the water. So you will see here on this map, there's a series of reservoirs which will go in, and we'll use these reservoirs to capture the water. So these will go in around 12 months before production starts, because we need to get one winter to ensure that we have enough water to start the processing plant. So as soon after the road goes in, we'll then look to build the reservoirs and capture the water. The other major change was we split. We had a combined integrated waste landform, and APA asked us to split those. So we now have a series of waste rock landforms, and then also we have a separate tails facility, which will be a dry stack tails facility. So there'll be no traditional upstream tailings or dam structure. It'll all be a dry stacked tailings. Quickly moving forward and looking at the scoping study in a little bit more detail. The scoping study is built around a mining contractor scenario. We will be operating 5 open pits. The EIA currently has 4 of those approved, and the 5th one of that is the LD deposit, which we're looking to get licensed over the next 2 or 3 years, and we'll be able to then bring that forward in the schedule. So the schedule is based around 20.5 million tonnes of material, and it has a sort of a strip ratio of around about 6:1, and certainly during the early years of Grandau Stage 1, that's closer to 1:1. So certainly, not a high strip ratio, not a low strip ratio. Certainly numbers that are very encouraging. Turning our sights to the processing circuit, this is very conventional processing circuit, and it's the same circuit you will see in virtually all lithium mines. So it's a combination of dense media separation, which is effectively using gravity to remove waste and create a product, and then into a flotation circuit, and in our case using very environmentally friendly reagents. We are targeting a grade of 5.5%, and I think, with the exception of a couple of deposits, most materials in the world at the moment average 5.5 or less. Certainly when you look at what's being sold out there at the moment, certainly 5.5, probably the new 6%. In terms of the recoveries, we're seeing some very strong recoveries in the laboratories. Our recent lock cycle tests were showing sort of 77 through to 81%. But I think when you look around the world, we're seeing recoveries in the order of sort of 70 to 75%. When operations are going. So we were quite conservative, and used a 73% recovery in our scoping study. So just to make sure that we weren't squeezing everything out of this, and certainly I think it's leaving lots of good upside for when we do the feasibility study. We'll also be producing a quartz and feldspar byproduct. So whilst we don't have any tantalum, one of the unique features for us is that we're in the heart of the Iberian Peninsula's ceramic industry, and certainly there's a strong interest in our waste effectively. So the waste products which come off the DMS and off the flotation cells will be saleable as a ceramic byproduct. So certainly that's very helpful, and we'll be certainly working with a number of the largest ceramics groups in Portugal to put some agreements together around that. Looking at the other key inputs into the scoping study, I guess the major one is the spodumene price. So as I mentioned, we're producing a 5.5% spodumene grade. So we spent quite a bit of time looking at what we're going to do with this. So we chose to take only price decks from 2023. Certainly, if you look back into late 2022, there were certainly some more favourable price decks, but we chose to use price decks which were sort of showing some level of correction, because we've certainly seen a little bit of the shine come off the spodumene price. So we settled on a price deck for spodumene at 6% of around $1,600 a tonne, and then we discounted that down a little because we'll only be producing 5.5%. So the US con grade that we took forward into our model was about $1,450. So that gave us so for the operation, we have a total capex of around about 280, which includes contingencies, and about 230 odd if you exclude those contingencies. Of that 230, around about 40 million of that is community related. So new roads, we'll be oversizing the water reservoirs that we're constructing to allow some freeboard for local community, that type of thing. If we've invested heavily into closure and rehabilitation costs, we'll be spending close to $100 million to close out the project and make sure it's as close to as reasonably possible as to what it was before we left. But even with all those costs, etc., we've got an all-in sustaining cost of around about $410 per tonne of concentrate, which is a very healthy margin when you think that we're, potentially selling it for around about $1,500 per tonne. So there's a sort of healthy $1,000 per tonne of concentrate margin there, which we're working on, which shows this is quite a robust project. When you look at the free cash flow, so the average annual revenue is around $304 million. But I think the important bottom lines there are after tax, the post-tax NPV is $500 and $900 million rather. Very good internal rate of return at 77.3% and a very short payback of 1.3 years. So I think by any metric that you look at this project now, it's a very robust project. And I think you can see by the fact that we haven't used aggressive spodumene prices. We've certainly seen other people studies using spodumene prices as high as 2,500 for life of mine, and certainly our recoveries, we've just taken a very cautious approach to that. So even when you sort of take that cautious approach, this project has produced a very robust financial outcome in the scoping study. Just quickly having a look at some of the sensitivities. So no surprise, the major sensitivity is price. So certainly if we were to put a more favourable price in there, certainly it's very cash generative. The other place which has quite a large impact is the recovery. So as I said, we haven't pushed that too hard at this point, but there's opportunities there for us in the DFS to perhaps improve that. But I think the really quite interesting thing for this project is to see that it's not heavily dependent on the capex, so it's very cash generative, and any sort of swings on the capex don't make a huge difference to the project. So quite a conservative scoping study, we believe. Plenty of room for improvement, and as we move into the DFS, we can further improve that bottom line story and continue to generate great outcome for all people included. In just swinging ourselves back to the project now and having a bit closer look at it. One of the very big focuses, as we sort of said earlier on the presentation, was trying to come up with a project which is acceptable as possible to all our stakeholders. It's impossible to keep everybody happy all the time, but certainly we put a huge amount of effort into developing a project which we think has got a very good balance between social, environment and economics. So we've put a lot of effort and time into it, and generated what we think is a very good outcome. So as I sort of touched on before, one of the sort of key things was the new road which we're putting through. Also, we've been very focused on what I would call comfort factors for the local communities. So certainly, whilst the process plant will run 24/7. We've committed to just running 2 8-hour mining shifts, which has a small impact on the bottom line, but with larger equipment, we're still able to mine and produce the required amount of material to operate this plant 24/7 at 1.5 million tonnes per annum. As we noted, all the water will just be collected on site. We'll be running a closed system on site. So basically, any water which comes out of the process plant will report to a water treatment plant. So no water which comes through the mining process will ever enter the local system. So it's all captured and completely recycled. One of the other potential issues for the region was the Iberian wolf. So in the north of Portugal, we have a protected species called the Iberian wolf, but we've spent 3 years monitoring this area. We have a very good relationship with the Lisbon University and one of the best wolf professors in the country, and him and his team have spent a long time out here monitoring for us. So we've been able to, through that work, be able to categorically say that there's no wolf that lives in this area, and the nearest place that they live is probably in excess of 5 kilometres away. So that's all been very positive for us. And in terms of the open pits, one of the sort of key requirements from the government was to try to minimise the landscape impact. So we've come up with a plan. I think we ran about 28 different mining sequences. So we're looking to backfill the Pinheiro pit and the Noah pit, which are quite small pits, and then we've agreed that we would backfill the Reservatorio pit and the Grandale pit to the point where the lake doesn't form in the bottom of it, and then push in the sides of it and rehabilitate it. So again, that's part of the $100 million we've committed to rehabilitate this site. But this project is a good project, and fortunately, it's been able to cover all those additional costs, environmental and social costs. So I think we've got a very good balance between everything now. Just quickly, we're very focused on our stakeholder engagement and community social commitments. We're very conscious of what we're doing there, and we've put a lot of effort into continuing to communicate as regular as we possibly can. So we have 2 community information centres, one in the town of Covish and the other in the town of Patikas, which are run and manned all the time. There's a lot of information available there. We often send out to landholders and to homeowners, information on the project. So we have a series of fact sheets. I think there's 17 or 19 of them now, which cover all sorts of various information around potential impacts, those types of things, and talks about what the company is doing to minimise those things. So we're very focused on those things and continuing to develop our programs as we move forward. So just looking at the main timeline for the project, it's been a very busy time for us in 2023. Certainly myself, hasn't been a lot of time for sleep, but it's all been very enjoyable as we've tackled all these issues. So this year we finalised the revised EIA or DIA rather, and got it in March. Then there was a further public consultation, which led to the positive DIA towards the end of May, I think it was 31st of May. And then shortly after that, once we had those final conditions and the final footprint was decided, we were then able to produce the updated scoping study. We've then since completed a very good capital raising, as I noted at the start. So our treasury is very strong at the moment. And we're now in the final throes of finalising the tenders for the DFS and the recape and the bypass road. So we've issued those tenders very soon after the positive DIA, and those have been out in the market now for a bit over a month, and we're just in the final process of assessing those things. So they'll be getting underway, all those major pieces of work, in August. So we're full steam ahead at the moment. We're hoping, or we're looking to get the rigs back out in September. It's very hard to do much in Portugal or in Europe really during the August months, as most people take some sort of holiday. So we're looking to get those up and going in September. So we're just finalising dual contracts, etc. at the moment, with a view probably somewhere in the first 2 weeks of just September, the rigs will start up again, and that will sort of focus on resource upgrades and some more geotech work, which we need to finalise for the final pitch designs as part of the DFS. So if that all goes well, we're hoping that we'll see the final licensing, etc., towards the end of 2024 and FID sort of late 2024, early 2025, which will see us into construction 2025 and production by around mid of 2026. Just looking at that schedule in a little bit more detail. So I think I've got a schedule which has about 650 line items in it. So it's a very complex job to do all these things, but this is a simple sort of summary of those things. And we can sort of see ourselves over here at the moment. So this is where we've had approval of the EIA in May, or end of May. So we're just sort of sitting in here at the moment. So we're just about to let the contracts for the DIA and the feasibility study, which you can see down here, and those two pieces of work will run for the next 9 to 12 months, just depending on how we manage to sort of put all those things together. So far so good. We've had a very successful year. We've got the right tickers in the box, but still we've got some more work to go to finalise the last pieces of the licensing, and then also to get the feasibility study done. But I think it's important to note that we haven't been idle. So we're unable to sort of finalise the scoping, the DFS, until we got the final EIA through, because that was really the thing which settled what the footprint would look like, because there was a lot of negotiation with the various stakeholders and interest parties as to what that would look like. But during that period, we've done an enormous amount of metallurgical test work. So we've actually completed all the DFS test work even before the DFS starts, and we're actually ready to start designing the plant. So whilst it's been a little bit frustrating waiting for these things to come in, we haven't been idle. We've been trying to make the best of the time available, which we've had. So we're moving forward. We're continuing to hit our milestones, and we're looking forward to a pretty interesting second half of 2023. Since we've got the DIA, I mean, even before we had the DIA, we had a lot of interest from sort of strategic partners and offtake partners. But I think it's fair to say that since we released that DIA, that list has got very much larger. So we're sort of at the moment, just looking at all those potential opportunities in terms of strategic partnerships and offtakes. And that's a process, we're looking to sort of, run in the second half of this year. So it's something we're going to be looking very close at, and, and looking to find somebody who can help us out, continue to fund this project and, help us deal with the CapEx. So, as with all these discussions and negotiations, our number one priority is to try and minimise any potential dilution for our shareholders. So, our preference will be to find some way or some partnerships or offtakes that can, find, good ways to finance these things, but without having our shareholders having to take too much more dilution. So certainly, we've received a lot of interest, and they're, from all parts of the value chain. So from refiners, battery makers, OEMs, equity players, all types of things. So the job for us over the next 3 to 6, we're continuing to push forward with the DFS, is to look at all those opportunities and see if we can't find something sensible to do in there for the project. Just quickly, we've got a very experienced team on site. So there's myself, but the rest of the team is very experienced in delivering projects. And over the next sort of 3 to 6 months, we're going to continue to strengthen that team and bring on a number of other senior executives from Portugal. As this project continues to mature, it's very important that we get further Portuguese executives in to support our existing team, because it's really important that the locals benefit from this project, and certainly like every country, using local staff there is a better idea, and the local nuances and those types of things. So certainly over the next 3 to 6 months, you will see a strengthening of the team, and also we're having a look at the board at the moment. We need to make sure that the board is fit for purpose as we move forward to move from what's effectively been an explorer, moving into a developer, and eventually a miner. So we're sort of looking at the whole team at the moment, both senior executives as well as the board, to make sure that we're appropriately configured to take on the challenges of the next 3 years ahead. I think, just sort of the last slide and where I'd like to end. I think, by any metric, we think, SAVANNAH is incredibly undervalued. It's always difficult to try and work out how to show that. You can look at the amount of, you can look at the amount of material we have in the ground. So you can look at resource versus market cap, that side of things. But the metric that we've presented here is looking at your PNAV. So for us, our PNAV is around 0.1, and I think if you look at any other groups which are in similar positions to us, we've got completed licenses. We're largely through our DFS now. Whichever way you look at us, we're incredibly undervalued. Most of our peers are operating perhaps closer to 0.3 PNAV. So there's us there. And I guess you can sort of see this overall upward trajectory. So that's kind of the path we are hoping, which we're on, and certainly the path that we're trying to drive value on. So certainly, we've got a great project now, and certainly it's my job and the senior executive jobs to get out there and continue to tell the story and explain to the investing market, why this is a very attractive project, and why it can be, a critical piece of Europe's transition into or green transition, basically. So certainly, it's it's a pretty exciting opportunity. We're incredibly undervalued. I think we can see that people are recognising that now with the recent capital raise. People are happy to come in. We're happy to come in at spot because they saw the true value of the stock. And I think you look at SP Angel or any of the people who have done research on us. I think they're sort of around the sort of 20 odd cent P mark. So I think there's a lot of room for growth there for us. So certainly our job as an executive is to try and drive that growth. And it's certainly going to be a very interesting space over the next sort of 3 to 6 months as we continue on the path of development. So getting all our studies up and going, but also looking at this partnership. I think a lot of the groups that have approached us see the true value of this project. So I think we're very hopeful we can get something very meaningful done around that, which will transcribe through to value to our shareholders. So I think that's it, Mark. So passing back to you for now. So I just try to keep it short and punchy and not go on too long, because I know people will like to ask questions. So
absolutely, Dale. Thank you very much indeed for your presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, as Dale said, please do continue to submit your questions just using that Q&A tab just on the right-hand corner of your screen. But just while Dale takes a few moments to review those questions already submitted today, I'd like to remind you the recording of the presentation, along with a copy of the slides and the published Q&A, can be accessed via your investor dashboard. Dale, I haven't given you a great amount of time, but if I could just ask you to click on that Q&A tab and start at the top, and where appropriate to do so, if you could just read out the question and give your response, and I will pick up from you at the end.
So I guess there is a number of questions around partnership. So I think it's probably I'll answer that together as one. So there's most of the questions around partnerships. I think the easiest answer to that is that we'll be running an informal process, which is actually underway. We have a very long list of punters, probably somewhere between 40 and 50 groups are interested in partnering with us in some way. So that process is underway, and we have a very experienced executive on our board, a gentleman by the name of Sasha Keane, who's our Chief Strategy Officer, and he has a lot of experience in this type of transaction and bank financing, those types of things. So Sasha has been directed by the board to run this process, and we're very hopeful that somewhere amongst those 40 to 50 groups, there's a suitable partner for us that gives us the good balance between finding the money we need to take this project forward and not diluting our shareholders, or minimally diluting our shareholders as much as possible. So we're hopeful that by the end of the year that we'll have some transparency around what's going to happen there. But certainly it should be a pretty exciting time as we sort of wade through those opportunities. And then I think certainly, as I said earlier on, there's a broad breadth of opportunity there. So from equity groups to potential or existing hydroxide producers, there's people from the battery plant sectors, there's OEMs, so it's an incredibly wide range of people. So certainly, it should be a pretty interesting time over the coming months as we wade through there. The next question is around EU grants, and are those within our reach? So certainly there is money in the EU. Certainly we're not seeing a lot coming out of the Critical Raw Materials Act at this point, which is not ideal. We're we're all hoping to see something perhaps more like the IRA out of America, that type of thing. But we think that's coming. So certainly we have the potential to get those, and we certainly have our eyes on those, and we already are involved in a number of EU initiatives, primarily at the moment around processing technology and those things. So we're working with a number of the universities on trying to improve various different processing technologies. So the money is there. It's I guess it's flowing slowly, but we're very hopeful by the time we come to deal with our capex late next year or early the year after that, some of that money is starting to flow through to where it needs to be, which is at the mine gate. Because without these mines operating, the whole battery chain is at risk, really. There's no point having battery factories if you've got no raw products for us. There's a question here. Did you say there is a possible 50 million tonne of supply in the Barroso mine? I did say there's opportunity to potentially expand towards that. We see all our resources are open along strike and down dip. So there's certainly that possibility. We need to continue to drill holes and to try and further evaluate that. So we're hoping, or we will be getting the rigs back in there in September of this year and continuing to sort of work and evaluate. So the primary focus of the drilling initially will be to do the work required for the DFS, and then we'll look at expansion work after that. So primarily we need to finalise the infill drilling and do some geotech drilling. There's some questions here about climate change and the need to capture water on site ASAP. So I guess to answer that, we've looked very closely at the water which comes into our area or our valley. On an annual basis, in excess of 1 million cubic metres of water comes into our valley, and year on year we need around 240,000 cubic metres of water. So as long as we're in a position to capture that water at least 1 year beforehand, we'll have more than enough water to run the process plant. And on top of that, there'll be water which comes from pit dewatering and bore dewatering around the pit. So we haven't included that. So we've been very conservative around how we've planned to do this. Let me keep going. So there's a question here about the construction of the road and the schedule and who designs the bypass road. So that bypass road will be designed by Portuguese consultants in conjunction with Infrastructure Portugal, which is the main government group that designs and run these things. And so that process will get underway during August. So we'll be starting that process, and then it will be a joint venture between the government and SAVANNAH in terms of that project, where they'll be helping us out with various different aspects. But ultimately, it's SAVANNAH's job to tender the final project and to organise the construction of that road. It's our job to pay for that. We've committed to that. There's a question here. It says, have you spoken directly to any car makers? Yes, we've spoken directly to many potential car makers. They're certainly very interested in spodumene supply, and I think you can see you've got Ford, who's invested in Liontown, for example, and there's many more examples there. So certainly, the OEMs are looking right down to the mine gate, and it's not only car companies. You've got your truck companies, and also your larger equipment companies, and that type of thing. So certainly, there's a lot of interest out there at all levels. So yes, there's another question here about debt funding and equipment lease, and how much of the total capex can you do without equity funding. So I think what we're trying to do through this upcoming partnering process is to try and see if we can't find some way, perhaps through part of the offtake or something like that, to hopefully leverage somebody else's balance sheet to help with that capex. So certainly we're very conscious that we don't want to dilute our shareholders any further. And part of why we're running a process is to try and look at as many different ways of financing this thing to ensure that we don't continue to dilute our shareholders. There's discussions going on with a number of the different mining fleet producers, and certainly there's lots of opportunities there. Perhaps we can be a show site or something like that for one of those in Europe, for one of those groups which might provide us some benefits. So certainly all those conversations are going on at the moment, and we're very hopeful that that something will come out of that. So we're, I guess, looking at all the possibilities in terms of how we best take this project forward. There's a cheeky question here: had you had lunch with Elon yet? I can't answer that. Can't answer that question. I haven't got his diary either. But certainly, we are meeting a lot of people, and there's a lot of interested parties out there. So certainly we can't divulge what those discussions are. But certainly, as I said, there's a broad range of interest in this, and we'll continue to explore that to make sure that we do the best possible deal for our shareholders. I think that's probably about it, Mark. I think I've got through most of the questions and covered most of the topics.
That's fantastic. Look, thank you very much indeed. And of course, any further questions that do come in, you will have the ability to review those, and we can publish those answered questions back on the Investor Meet Company platform. Dale, perhaps just before redirecting investors to provide you with their feedback, which I know is particularly important to you and the company, could I just ask you just for a few closing comments, please?
Sure. Well, firstly, thanks for everybody for taking the time to come along and listen today, and I hope we're able to show you, the enormous potential of the Barossa lithium project. I think hopefully why we're so undervalued and why it's worth taking a closer look at SAVANNAH as a potential investment opportunity. I think the next 6 months are going to be very exciting as the project moves forward, and we as the board are very sort of conscious, and we're trying to continue to create further value for our shareholders. So I've been banging on about being incredibly undervalued, but it's our job to get out there and trying to drive that value. So I think we can do that through the continued sort of maturity of the project as we move through the various different steps, and we're very hopeful that somewhere in the next 6 months we might be able to find ourselves a good quality strategic or offtake partner who will help take some of that financing burden off the company and reduce the possibility of further dilution for our shareholders. So certainly we thank everybody who's been supporting the company, and certainly as Mark said, we'll be very happy to go through any questions which I haven't covered through this discussion today. And people are always happy. I'm always happy if people wish to reach out to me directly. Happy to do that and answer any questions where I can. So thank you very much to everybody, and thank you, Mark, for organising this. It's been a great platform.
Fantastic, Dale. Thanks indeed for updating investors today. Could I please ask investors not to close the session? You should be automatically redirected to provide your feedback in order that the team can better understand your views and expectations. This will only take a few moments to complete, and those greatly valued by the company. On behalf of Dale and the team at SAVANNAH Resources PLC, we'd like to thank you for attending today's presentation. That concludes today's session, and good morning